Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Genre Blender, the podcast that celebrates storytelling across books, games, TV, and film. My name is Ryan.
And I'm Kris, and today we are talking about physical and mental health and how it affects our hobbies. I've been thinking about doing this for a long time and thinking about who to reach out to for just my own booktube channel, to be honest, because there is a lot of people out there who suffer from various ailments, whether it be mental or physical, or going through their own sort of, neurodivergence path. And it seems like a really important thing to remind people that there are others like them out there. And it was about time we did one of those philosophical episodes where we talk more about things rather than just books and shows. Although you have watched a lot, so we should jump into a read
A read, watch, play.
watch play update, because the amount of films on this list, team, it's quite big.
It's been watch, and more watch really for me.
You did come down with the plague immediately after the last podcast, so
I did. I had a reason. I was couch bound, and then I watched 7 films. So, I mean, we can go through them if you want. I can give a little spiel.
let's just go. Let's snapshot reviews, 60 seconds, because you watched a lot. Your goal of watching 52 films for the year, you've done a decent chunk of that in January.
Yeah, we're getting there. We might actually be there by May,
February at
June.
this point.
Yeah, it's a pace I won't keep up for sure. So yeah, look, I just watched these back to back. So and I was kind of out of it. So take what I say with a grain
Give
of
us your
salt.
favourites.
Yeah. Okay. So I watched a movie called Sharper. I've never heard of this one. This was 2023. It's like a thriller crime drama. It's got Julianne Moore, Justice Smith. It was okay. It was fine. It follows 4 different people, and there's like a theft and conspiracy and stuff, and how they all interlink. It was fine. Is it worth watching? Yeah, I guess. It was alright.
When you're couch bound.
Yeah, when you couch back. Yeah, it just literally that was the first one I watched, and it just came up, and I was just like, that'll do. Click. It was fine. I watched Nightcrawler from 2014 with Jake Gyllenhaal. I think most people have seen that one. I'd never seen it. I quite liked it. It was pretty good. It follows this guy who's kind of got sadistic tendencies. He kind of forces his way into the TV news reporting world, and then kind of creates stories by interfering with stuff and does some pretty horrible things, but it was good. I liked the mood and the vibe. It was a good one. I watched a movie called The Mauritanian from 2021 with Jodie Foster and Benedict Cumberbatch in it. It's like a drama thriller, but it's based on a true story. I had no idea about this, but it follows a Mauritanian man who was detained in Guantanamo Bay after 9/11. And he was never charged with anything. He was just being held there, and it was a story of him, his life and what happened, and his defense attorney trying to, fight for his release. So yeah, that was very, very good. I don't do star
Out of the
ratings.
ones you've said so far, that one's piqued my interest.
Yeah, that's the one I would recommend out of all of these. I don't do star ratings, but if I did, that would be a 5-star. That's a thumbs up from me.
Damn.
That's a must watch. I think it won some awards. I don't know.
Forget Rotten Tomatoes. We're going with Ryan's score.
Yeah, I don't review films at all. I don't review anything, but this is fun. I watched Longlegs finally from last year. Have you seen that one?
No, but it is on my to-watch list.
I think it's worth a watch. I liked the mood of it. It was very unsettling. The way that it was made was very unsettling, and I liked that about it. But I had some major problems with it. I won't say anything more about it. I think most people know it's about a FBI recruit going after a serial killer, but it gets weird. It was creepy, but I have some big issues with it, and it kind of ruined it for me at the end. But anyway, I'd like you to watch that one. We can talk about it.
The amount of social experiments that come from this podcast. What we should do.
Love it. Wouldn't have it any other way. I watched a movie called Nightmare Alley from 2022. Again, had no idea this was a thing. It's kind of like a carnival vibe, kind of. It's a drama, I guess, but it's thriller-ish. Didn't like it. It's the only one on this list I wasn't really keen on. It was too long. I thought it could have been edited way down. But it's funny because this is the one that has most of the big names out of all of these. There's Kate Blanchett, Bradley Cooper, Toni Collette.
I feel like that's the way that it goes. The more Hollywood names you get in, you're like,
Yep. That's it. So that was fine. It was just too long. I watched Roadhouse, the new Roadhouse that I've been wanting to watch for ages.
Was it worth it?
It was fun. It's a stupid, turn off your brain, watch it, great action flick. I've written in capitals, super fun, silly action. So take that what it's worth.
That's a review. That's the review.
That's the review. It's about an ex UFC fighter, by the way. He just basically takes a job as a like a bouncer at a I guess it's a roadhouse, right? That's what it's called. But anyway, it's a fun one. And then the other 5-star rating film out of all of these is Kiki's Delivery Service, which I just watched the other night with Steph, and it was great. I'd never seen it.
Is that a
It was
Ghibli?
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect movie. I wrote in capitals at the bottom.
Okay. Well, damn. Okay, so you've had a few good film experiences over the last little bit. I added one to this list. I watched Wicked.
Hey.
with the family. We sat up on the couch because we were looking at going to the cinemas, and like cinemas are so expensive nowadays.
You told me that recently, and I was just like, wow, okay, I'm not going to the cinemas then.
I looked at getting 2 tickets to take Rach to the cinema, and it was like $80. And I was like, no, not happening. And then even to rent it was $30. And I was like, well, we've got a bunch of people sitting on the couch. We'll watch it once. Rachel doesn't like musicals. She loves Ariana Grande, though, the dog's namesake. And I don't mind musicals. So it was a nice evening. I think we put it on too late. I didn't realize how long it was for part 1 of the movie.
Oh, wow. Wait, how long is it?
I don't know, it was like 2.5 hours for part 1.
For part 1.
And like the next part must be coming out. I think that's coming out either this year or next year. Yeah, it was good. It's probably my least favorite musical and I like musicals, so out of any I've seen. But it was done well. The cinematography and the CGI were fantastic. Like, well worth a watch when it's cheaper than going to the cinema. Unless you can't do musicals, in which case, don't do it. But I had like a real nerd moment when, I can't remember the second lass's name, but Idina Menzel had like a cameo in it, and her and the other, I think her name is Kristen Chenoweth, I want to say, they were the longest running Broadway actresses of Wicked when it came to, the world stage. And I thought it was really cool that they got a cameo in there, because I guess if you think of the play, they're the names you think of who have performed these roles. So the fact that they both got a cameo in there was really fun, and no one else cared about that. Which is, I was like, oh, they did this in the thing, and then like, oh, okay, no one
You were
cares.
nerding out all by yourself.
I was in there on like the movie database, being like, just confirming my theories. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you watched something. That's good. I think it's good to switch it up and watch stuff as well. So
I've done 2 movies this year. I told Ryan after the last podcast, my aim is like 25 to do 1 movie a fortnight. We'll see if it happens. I tend to gravitate more towards books, but I have read some stuff.
Good.
Over the last little bit. I finished Absolution, which we'll talk about when Ryan's finished it. It is a trip. I'm really like eagerly anticipating the WTF message in the Discord once you get to the end of it.
Yeah, we've been back and forth a little bit in the Discord. So the buddy read stuff, in case anyone's interested for this and also future ones, that's all taking place in the Discord, which you can get access to through our free tier Patreon. There's only that one free tier. So at the moment, Chris and I have just been back and forth, just talking about it bit by bit, and just things that grab us. And the whole thread at the moment is just like, what the fuck? This is crazy. What is, this line? It's nuts.
I don't think any Jeff Vandermeer book is going to be any different. But at the same time, I love it. So the third part, which is where you're up to, you're dealing with a person who is quite reliant on drugs. And as you read it, it feels like you're on an acid trip, to the point where I put it down. It's like, am I on drugs? I was reading it, like, I need a minute. And I was like, that's such a weird out-of-body experience that happened, which was really cool. But at the same time, I have no idea what's happening.
That's high praise for an author if they can pull that off. So that's props to Jeff Vandermeer.
No idea what's going on, but I dig it. Okay.
I actually, one thing that did surprise me. This is something we can talk about because it's not like specific, like plot related. But and this was the same in the other books as well. But I just kind of assumed, after reading Annihilation, it would all just be sort of one tone, like he just that's what he did, and it's just like he's a master at different tones for different, the different mood that he is able to portray based on what he's writing. He's got quite a vast repertoire to pull from.
It was really interesting because I think each book in that Southern Reach trilogy, and we won't harp on too much about it because we've got a full episode on it. each book shifted tone, right? Where I find that each part of this book, so there's three parts, shift tone as well. So, and it follows suit almost, where that first part is that real atmospheric, we're creepy, we're going into Dead Town, we don't really know what's happening, but things are happening, we need to close this border. The second one was, again, the easiest to read from a literary standpoint, where we're following one character and one sort of storyline. And the third one is just something else. There's no second person POV though, which I was very thankful for because that took me a hot minute to get into. But yeah, it's been good. Like I think I'm now a Jeff Vandermeer fan for life. Like,
Nice.
if you can just make me go, I have no idea what's happening, but I loved it every step of the way. My main issues with this one comes in the third section, so I'll save that for the Discord.
All right, cool. We'll talk about that.
I also started Swan Song by Robert McCammon because I thought you were going into The Stand, and I
False alarm.
why is it a false alarm, Ryan? What happened yesterday?
I found something else. I'll talk about it later. But I found another book that I'll be reading as soon as I get it. So.
I don't mind exposing you now. What have you?
Great.
What have you
Okay.
found?
Well, I discovered a new game that's coming out called Exodus, and there is a book tie-in, but also it's written by Peter F. Hamilton, who actually helped create this universe. So I'm full on down rabbit hole territory for just go. I'm in it. I'm in this thing. And so anyway, the book is like 928 pages, and when that arrives, that's what I'll be reading instead of The Stand. So sorry.
That's fine. I put Swan Song down for various reasons. I've got beta reading obligations to do, so I need to put it down. And also, I need to finish this friggin' book.
Oh yeah, you've been on that one a while.
I am still at halfway. I'm going to finish it before the end of this month. That is the new goal, and Swan Song will wait for me. But it's been really good so far. But yeah,
Nice.
I also haven't really played any games, to be completely honest. I've not done a whole lot of gaming. I have, however, sent the book back to the editor. It is done. This round of edits is done. It happened this morning. We're back to the dev editor, waiting for the next round. But I was really... in that last 20 pages, the whole plot of book 2 changed because of how much work she had me put into the backstory. And I'm so glad that I listened to one of my author friends who said, don't start writing book 2 until you get your dev edit back, because it could completely change what's happening there. And I was like, it really did.
Yeah.
So I'm glad.
Sage advice.
So when I get that back, so now I'm going to go plot book 2, and then when I get that back, it may change again. I don't know.
Yeah, well, congratulations. That's another big step along the journey.
Thank you. Cover's just been finalised as well, so that's exciting.
Nice. I will say I've had a sneak peek of the cover. It's very good. That's all I'll say. It's very good.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Buy Chris's book.
Yep.
Comes out. Shameless plug. All right.
Nice.
Well, let's jump into it. So we are talking about physical and mental health and how this helps or hinders our enjoyment of our hobbies. I thought we could basically split this into 3 sections where we talk about our physical health. So both Ryan and I have different ailments. I think I used that term earlier in the episode. Look at, I guess, neurodivergence. I have not been diagnosed, and I'll repeat that sentiment when we get to it, but I do have some sensory issues. Ryan has been diagnosed, so we'll talk about that. And then also mental health, which is just a general, I guess, look at mental health, because we all go through it. It doesn't matter who you are, we all have dips and wanes in our moods, and that will affect things that we enjoy doing. So I guess you want to start off with physical health and tell us a bit about what ails you. I've stuck that word in my brain. Let's stay in there.
That's staying there now. It's a good one. It's sort of it's all encompassing. Cool. Yeah. So basically, there's 2 main things for me. One is something called POTS. I don't know if anyone's heard of this before. It stands for, and I'm going to trip over my words, I'm sure, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Basically, it's a form of autonomic dysfunction that's, it basically just means your autonomic nervous system doesn't function correctly. And there's lots of different types of dysautonomia. But in the case of POTS, the diagnostic criteria means that your heartbeat raises more than 30 beats per minute when you go from like a lying or a sitting to standing. But then there's all these other things that come with that, like fatigue and lethargy, and some people faint from it a lot as well. I don't, thankfully. I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, significant fatigue, lightheadedness, brain fog is a big thing, and that's like a constant thing that I'll battle with all the time. So I guess when it comes to like enjoying my, reading, gaming, watching stuff, consuming media of any kind. A lot of the time, it's just it depends. It just has to be. I have to see how I am on any given day, how much I can concentrate. It's often just like there's nothing you can really do about it. There are some days when I'll just have to be like horizontal and not doing anything else, right? But for the most part, like I don't have it too bad. I'm pretty thankful for that. But but sometimes it's just, okay, I can't sit and concentrate on a book today, so maybe I'll just listen to an audiobook or maybe I'll just watch something instead. So it's annoying because sometimes it gets in the way of what I want to do. Like, for example, we're doing our buddy read of Absolution, this month, and there are times when that's what I wanted to read, but it's just like, well, I can't concentrate on that at the moment. Got to put that down, do something else. It's just not happening because of that. Or sometimes it'll be I can't sit like in my reading chair and read. I have to be like horizontal. So I actually, and I do this a lot, and I did it with Absolution. I actually ended up buying the digital the ebook as well, just so that I could read it whenever I wanted to. So that's the main one for me.
Has that attributed to why you have so much on the e-reader, or do you, like, I think we've spoken about this before, do you genuinely enjoy reading e-copies more than a paperback or hardback? Or is it something in the back of your brain that goes, I know, like, 900-page books, not fun to read while holding in bed? Like, because it's just like, if this falls on me, that sucks.
That'll knock me out.
Yeah.
A bit of both. I do like ebooks just because I can read it anywhere, whenever, and it does, like, not that I'm not a social person. I don't go out and do a lot of things. It's not that so much. It's just I can pick it up and just start reading a bit easier. And ebooks, I tend to read more on digital. So I usually just go with what I will read more with, and that's why I usually like it. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely related to that. But yeah, again, I think I mentioned it last episode. I'm doing a lot of buying the hardcover of the book, so I have something nice, and I do still use them and read them as well, and then also supplementing that with a digital copy or an audiobook as well.
I was looking at my copy of Books of the Sea, and I think there's like 6 or 7 books in there. And it's big, and it's a hardcover. And I was like, how am I taking that out of the house?
Yeah,
that's not going to fit in any bag I have, like, and not look insane.
No.
So
that's a whole topic.
That's the whole thing. But yeah, I was curious about the ebook thing because my mum was here. I was telling Ryan earlier that my parents just went home yesterday, and we got my mum onto Kindle when she was here, and she's already blitzed like 2 books straight up, downloaded another 5. She's on Kindle Unlimited. I was like, you are reading circles around me. Like this week I didn't read very much at all because I was trying to do Absolution as well, and I think I was like reading 30 pages a day. Just because of the content.
Slow going.
Yeah. Do you find that you have vertigo as well? Is that something that happens when you try and get up?
I don't. I'm very fortunate. My partner Steph actually suffers from vertigo. That's the thing she deals with. That's not a fun thing to have to deal with. So I don't. And I'm very, very fortunate of that. It's not a fun ailment.
The owls. The owls are not the fun kind with pale at the front. Don't clip that.
No. No.
So are you also have insomnia in here?
Yeah,
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a more recent thing. And you'd think that would be a good thing. Not a good thing, but like it would be helpful for getting through lots of things that you have on your to-read list. Not really, because most of the time it's just staring at a ceiling.
Would it enhance the brain fog though?
Yeah.
Because you've got no oxygen to the brain to be able to do the things that you want to do.
You need sleep to function, and if you don't get that, nothing sticks up here, and everything just gets worse. And it affects each other as well. So if I don't sleep, the pot symptoms will get worse as well. So it's it all compounds. But I mean, that is something that's still a work in progress. I get about 4 to 5 hours sleep a night now, so it has improved a little bit. But yeah, it's that's I guess a lot of people suffer from insomnia. I know I'm not alone on that, but fun times.
And I guess the other thing to talk about, and I'll touch this upon this as well when I talk about my physical condition, is the follow-ups and the doctor's appointments and all of that comes with it. So how frequently do you have to go to the doctor? And like, because that takes away time as well, and especially mental time if you've got to get results and all of that.
Yeah, there was a time in my life when that was pretty constant. It's not now, thankfully. So this is because it's happened so long. It's something that I manage now. It's just become part of my routine, and that I take medication for and stuff like that. So I think when you get to that point, although we all have something that's annoying that interferes with our physical health and what we want to be able to do, and that gets in the way. I think when you get to the point where you're just managing it and you know sort of what to expect when this happens, I can do this and it helps a little bit, or whatever. That's where I'm at. So yeah, thankfully that's not something I have to deal with on a lot, maybe a handful of times a year. It's not a constant thing for me.
I remember because my diagnosis has been relatively recent. So, since I moved to Perth last year. So I have chronic kidney disease. So I need to be watching my kidney function. And the symptoms are kind of similar in terms of what stops me from doing my hobbies. And a lot of that comes down to brain fog, fatigue, dizziness, vertigo. Just sometimes all my concentration has to be in going to work some days because I'm a people leader and I need to be on point for the people that I'm leading. And if I'm having a really bad brain fog day, that all of my energy is just making sure I'm coherent for the people that I'm speaking to,
Yeah.
and I can't do much else. And thinking about just reading Absolution, because it's the most recent example that I have. That's a book that takes quite a bit of concentration, and I've also been reading The Dust of Dreams by Stephen Erickson, which is book 9 of a 10-book series, which is so convoluted and messy, and there's thousands of characters and there's thousands of locations, and where maybe not thousands, but you know what I mean. And they all sort of come together. I'm like, on those days, I cannot read a book like that. I just
Yeah.
because I'm going to take in nothing, so there's no point in me
Yeah.
doing that. Even sometimes, the easy books, which we'll get to what we do to sort of combat those things, is I'll tend to have something a lot easier, a lot lighter on the side, and I still enjoy those things. They're not what I gravitate towards, but I enjoy them. Some days I can't even do that, and I just like sit and stare at a wall, or I can't even watch TV or anything unless it's something that I've repeated many times, which is I have like a real commitment issue. So I start a lot of things and never finish them, series, whether it be TV or books or whatever. So it's normally like Will and Grace or Charmed at that point because I grew up
Yeah.
with them. I've watched them 100 times. I don't need to concentrate. Like I
Yeah.
know what's going on. I could probably recite Will and Grace for you word for word at this point,
Oh wow.
which is
Nice.
which is embarrassing for me on many levels. um,
I never watched that one, so that's good.
oh, come on.
Yeah,
So
I don't
good.
know. I don't know why. Yeah.
So much better than Friends. Sorry, Friends fans.
Them's
Um,
fighting words.
yeah, no. People choose one, I think. It's either Will and Grace or Friends around the same time. But
Yeah.
yeah, it can be a real pain in the ass.
Mm. Mhm.
Especially if you're someone who likes their routine to the
Yes.
point where I get quite stressed if I don't follow that routine. So if I am booking, and we've talked about this before, but if I booked in myself time to do XYZ between times, and I'm like, I can't do that, I'm out of whack. Like it just affects
Yeah.
my whole day. And
Yeah.
having to learn to combat that has been interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that knowing you and yes, you're a list maker. You like your routines. You have very
We
set
can say it.
things
I'm
that you
very
do.
rigid.
That's nothing wrong with that. I always kind of admired though that you would still like you have a lot of commitments and things that you are doing, not just for work but also outside of work. And that's one of the things that I think I really struggle with because I know if I bite off more than I can chew, I know what the repercussions are because it's happened over and over again. And we'll probably get to it in a little bit, but like it's just one of the things I've noticed is that you'll still do all of these things and find a way. I don't know if sometimes that's I don't know, and you can speak to it if that's always a healthy way to do it, or if there's things
It
that you
is
just have
not.
to. There it is. But anyway, it is something that I have noticed that even though yes, there are things that you deal with, you still show up and do all of these things and take on all of these projects, which is really admirable.
I have to look. I've certainly had to become more honest about my capabilities since the diagnosis, and I guess going through that and understanding what it was that I was feeling, because I've had a period of just many doctors, and like someone told me offhand that I had this thing, and like my experience of getting diagnosed with chronic kidney disease was, oh, do you know you have this? And then the doctor went off to a different thing, and I was like, can we just circle back to
Hold up a
the
minute.
last thing that you said, and what does that mean, and what are the symptoms? And like from there, it was like, oh, that's ticked all these things that I've been feeling. And I was like, well, you're obviously not great at this situation. So I went to a dietitian. Like I had probably a few months where it was just appointments the whole time and like seeking advice and still trying to fit everything in. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. But that's sort of the physical stuff, I guess. Shall we move on to neurodivergence? And I'll let you take the reins on this one because, like I said, I've not been diagnosed. I just have some auditory issues that really like affect the way that I enjoy the things that I do.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, about 6 years ago. There's five different ways that this affects me when it comes to reading, watching stuff, games, things like that. The biggest one, and probably my biggest struggle in life, is literally just switching between tasks. I just like it's one of those things that a lot of autistic people experience, a lot of ADHD people experience as well. Going from one task to another, disengaging from one thing, moving on to something else. Doesn't matter what it is. It's something that I experience at work. It's something that I experience when, reading, or if I know that I need to read, we're doing this buddy read. I know I need to read X number of pages today. Getting to the point where I just start reading, that is the hardest part. Once you get over that, then it's easy. But that task switching, it can really mess with you, right? Because that will throw my whole day out, getting stuck on a task. There's a really awesome little comic strip that my therapist showed me, just shared with me. It's called Tendril Theory. So it's a theory, and then the creators actually made a comic strip on it as well. I'll link it in the show notes. It's worth having a look at. It's just a very short single page comic strip. But it kind of illustrates what that feels like and how it feels when you're going between tasks to disengage from one task and start another. So that's the biggest one for me. And related to that is also being stuck in what a lot of people call waiting mode. If you've got something coming up that day, I think a lot of us experience this as well. Not being able to start any task, right? And it's very much, it's all part of executive dysfunction, but it is something that really gets gets in the way. It's a big pain in the butt.
That's sort of why we're trying to get Rachel diagnosed. One of the big things for her. I feel like I have the opposite problem where I schedule in too much of any given day. Like if I've got a busy, and like it does her head in, because if I don't expect her to come with me and do all these things, but like I will schedule my day to the point where I'll have like a roster of what's happening each hour of every day.
Yeah.
And like days when I don't have that, I just sit there and do nothing. So I don't have a plan. I don't know what's happening today. I'm just going to be listless and annoyed at everything.
There's nothing on my calendar, therefore I'm doing nothing. I'm doing exactly what my calendar says.
I just like look sadly at the backyard. I just don't know how to function without a
Nice.
full day's worth of stuff to do. And like, yeah, it's. I feel like I've let that go a little bit since moving to Perth and not having as many obligations and like taking that step back. But it's still a thing. Like if I've got 2 or 3 days and I've got nothing planned, I'm like, I need to make a plan to do something.
The next thing on my list is I wrote hyperfocusing, and I was hyperfocusing by writing these notes, right? This is why there's a lot of notes that I'm looking at. But that's one of the things that is I guess considered a help and a hindrance, right? Because a lot of people call it a superpower. It can be. Sometimes it really depends on the context, but when you're doing something that you should be doing and that you enjoy doing, then absolutely it's great because you just, like we've all experienced, being in the zone, and autistic folks just do that a lot more. It just happens a lot more often, and sometimes it gets in the way because it means that you're hyper focusing on the wrong things. So, there's that too. It's a double-edged sword.
Also, how mad hyper-focused people get if you try to interrupt them.
Yeah, well, tendril theory is the same thing.
Way.
Yeah.
Now I understand it more. I try not to do it, or I try to like. It's interesting. So I read a book called Dirty Laundry, and it's by a couple that ADHD_love on Instagram, and it changed the way that I interact with my wife, who is going down that route of getting diagnosed. And just giving me a lot more patience and understanding about what's happening in the brain, particularly around those hyper-focused moments, or the now or never reflex, like you do it now or you do it never. Like that's happening, things like that. And it's been very interesting to on this end of it, not having ADHD, learning about things that I can do to help get what my needs met, while also not
Mhm.
really pulling her out of what she's doing. And I
Yeah.
found things like, give them a time warning and put an
Yes.
alarm on. Like, hey, I'm going to need you to do this thing in like 20 minutes. I've got an
Yep.
alarm here at that point. Is that cool? And like just giving that, because then you mentally prepare for whatever's going to happen. But yeah, it's been interesting. And
Yeah.
have you experienced things like that?
Oh, for sure. One of the things that really helps, I don't do it all the time, but it has certainly helped me, and I think it helps a lot of people, is having a visual timer. And you can actually, you can buy them, they're around, but being able to visually see how much time is left. Because if you don't, if you experience time differently, and you don't have any sort of concept of it, you don't feel time passing in the same way. It can be really hard to keep any kind of schedule, to even communicate when to do something, and to agree on a time to do something, because that just feels completely different. And in a hyperfocus state as well, like time just disappears. But having a visual timer helps because then you can actually see time passing in a really easy way as well. So that's another big one for me, hyperfocusing, but also routines. You spoke about routines in a little bit. Same for me, but in a little bit of a different way. I do need to have structure, but for me, it's usually rather than time. Like it wouldn't necessarily be I'd put something on my calendar for such and such a time because I know how easily that can get blown out, and there's no reason to stick to it, or to try to stick to it because it just always ends in frustration. Usually for me, it's something like this task will follow this other task, or I'll group these two tasks together so I know when I'm doing this, what follows is a lot easier, because I know what to expect coming after it. So I guess time blocking, but not necessarily by a certain time of the day. That usually helps me out a ton. But I have like rituals for things as well. So if I'm going to be reading, I know that I have to do all of these other things first. Like I have to get my workout done in the morning. I have to tick off all the other tasks on my list, or I will be ruminating on them as well. And there's just no way I'm going to concentrate. So they're things that you just learn over time, or that someone has helped you figure out. A lot of this was, stuff that I've worked out in therapy, but a lot of it is just like hacks that I've figured out just by living life, right? A lot of us, especially late diagnosed people, just kind of have had to deal with this stuff growing up anyway. So there's a lot of that. Sensory processing disorder, of course, goes hand in hand with autism and ADHD for a lot of people as well. For me, it's mostly temperature and touch. So I overheat really easily. I just do not like being hot at all. I'm a horrible person. If I'm too hot, I'm horrible. You don't want to know me at all.
I
And
get
you can,
warnings.
yeah, yes,
Because it's summer at the moment, so I'm like, it's hot today. I'm cranky. Okay, got
indeed.
you.
Yeah, exactly. I cannot regulate temperature, so if I'm hot, I'm freaking hot, and then I've just got to go like have a cold shower if I want to get cool again. But also just like if I'm wearing like scratchy clothes or whatever, I just can't concentrate. So it's just things like that, being aware of that stuff. Visual clutter as well. If I'm in, and actually this is a question I had for you because I know you are someone who takes a book with you everywhere you go, pretty much, right? You're that guy. I aspire to be that
I am
guy, and
that.
I'm just not. And the reason I'm not is mostly because if I'm in an unfamiliar environment, there's no way I'm going to be reading. I just can't turn the brain off. There's too much distraction, either mostly visually for me. Auditory distractions I find easy to manage because you just put in some headphones or whatever. It's you can turn off that stuff. Visual distractions, if you have your eyes open, you can't really turn that stuff off. So if I'm in a very busy, think of shopping centers or supermarkets, things like that. They're the worst. But anywhere else, fluorescent lights, overhead lights, things like that, cannot concentrate. It's just one of those things.
I just pulled a book in front of all of that. Don't look at it. That's why you have a big book. Oh, look, I'm only looking at words now.
That's all I'm looking at. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll come back because I know you want to talk about that a little bit, especially auditory. But that question for you is like, how do you manage that? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And then the last one for me is something called agnosia, which there's two types: topographical place blindness and face blindness as well, I guess, which is always fun. So this one's kind of fun. It's funny when I talk about it. It's not necessarily funny for me because that's just my life,
You
but
live it, yeah.
I live it. But so, for example, right? So think of any video game you've played that has a map in it, and you have to go find things. Now, let's say it doesn't actually tell you where to go. I can't play that game. I struggle with that so bad because I don't see and I can't like find my way. Like navigation just doesn't happen for me. So, and that's real life as well. So that's the reason I don't drive. My partner Steph is my navigator, and we kind of it's a bit of a joke that she's a walking, talking roadmap, and I just cannot do any of that. And it's good because I drink and she doesn't, so she drives everywhere. It's a great partnership here that we've got. It's worked out perfectly for us.
When you're shopping around for partners, kids, make sure you get one that doesn't drink.
I mean, it couldn't have gone any better.
That's
so
just the way
anyway.
you put it. Like I'm now seeing like
Yep.
adverts in my head.
Yeah, it's we joke about it a lot. It's pretty funny now. But yeah, when another example when characters in, let's say, watching a movie, character is introduced and that character disappears and then comes back, I won't always recognize that that's the same person. Things like I've got to sort of keep an eye out for like the way it's usually voice. The voice will give it away for me. That's usually what I notice, or the way somebody moves, or what they're wearing, or their hairstyle. Those are the things that I look for. Those kind of cues. But yeah, it's a fun one. It's a lot of people have it, and a lot of people don't talk about it. It's just one of those things that
Now I'm wondering if that's why I hate maps in fantasy books. Everyone goes like gaga over maps. I'm like, I don't care. Tell me where we're going.
yeah,
Like, I want to travel on foot with you. This map means nothing to me.
yeah, throw the map out the window.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's pretty to look at. Never look at it again.
Move on.
Well, I was talking recently to, actually this morning, a friend reminded me there was a book that I read last year and her second book's coming out this year, so I need to reread it. Anyway, that was tangent. The top of her books, because she's self-published, she could do anything that she sort of wanted to artistically. And what she did at the top of each chapter was put where we were in the map. Like, she had a map. She's like, this is where we physically are in the overall map. Like, that's very helpful. I
Agreed.
know where we are now. Because you put
Yep.
that in there. And it's the first time I've ever seen it, but genuinely,
Yep.
do that.
Anytime
If you
there's
want
a
me to-
you are here,
Yeah.
it's great.
Just give me that big sticker. Like, this is where we are. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Got you.
Indeed.
Yeah, mine's definitely more auditory. So I never want to yell at people more than when there are tiny voices in the distance away from me and all my brain can pick up on is whatever that conversation is. Or like, and it's not if it's like immediately in front of me. So like my computer makes a noise, but I'm used to it. That's fine. Talking to people, if there's like a television on, I can't read necessarily in that moment, but it doesn't freak me out. Like if I'm scrolling on my phone or I'm normally looking up books. Who are we kidding? It doesn't take me out of the moment, but the second that there is a little piece of audio that my brain's like honing in on, I can't. And like, the rage builds up inside of me. And
So it actually makes you angry because I hear that reaction a lot. Yeah.
Like, it just makes me so furious. I was like, why is that bee in existence? Like, I can't not hear it in the yard. But normally it's conversation. Most time it has nothing to do with me. They are people that don't know I exist or care. But I'm here being like, I don't care what your husband had for dinner 3 weeks ago. I really don't. But my brain will just like hyper-focus on whatever is happening over there. And let me tell you, people are boring. We are all boring. Unless we like what our inner circle likes. I'm sure people listen to this conversation and be like, dull. Outside of our
Case in
own
point. Case in point.
outside of our own like circle, and I laugh about it all the time because I pick up on it a lot while we're out, like if we're having a meal or something, and I can hear like, I don't know, 3 or 4 tables over and they're just talking about how to prepare chicken. I'm like, that's great, I don't care.
That's information I don't need in my brain right now.
I just don't need it. In situations I know where it's going to be, like if I can mentally prep that it's going to be there, then it's fine. But it really does take me out of reading in particular. I can't read because I'm reading the words on the page when I'm thinking about Jeff's chicken, like, and it's very difficult to get back into whatever I'm reading if I'm caring about what's happening with Jeff and his chickens. So
Damn those chickens. I know you've been reading Absolution. I know the name of the first chapter. Question then, what about music?
I can't listen to music. No.
So you don't listen to music at all when you read?
Not when I'm reading, not when I'm writing.
Even not without lyrics?
No, but which is interesting because a lot of what I write has been influenced by music more than anything else.
Interesting.
So it'll be a lyric, it'll be a couple of bars in something that I've listened to. But like my Spotify Wrapped is pathetic because I don't listen to music very often, unless I'm in the gym. Like working out is basically the only time I listen to music, or walking the dogs if I finish an audiobook and I need like a breather before I can jump into the next one. Um, Sometimes I've had to go down the route of the focus music for work because I've been really brain foggy on that day, and I need my brain to jump into a wavelength, and they're designed to get your brain moving at a certain pace. So I usually can't work while I'm listening to it, but I can listen to it for 20-30 minutes, and then like just then I'm hearing the siren and it's just taking me out.
Right?
um,
And that'll
but
probably be edited out, but for reference, there was a
the
siren in
siren
my
that went through,
background, so there you
yeah.
go. Yeah.
I've completely lost it.
See?
On. What was I saying?
One eternity later.
For you, because I remember you telling me you did, I think you ended up buying them those loop earphones. Yeah, right. So is that sort of your method for dealing with that?
Yeah, and we'll jump into like I guess the solutions or what we do to alleviate. But these were gifted to me by someone called Jeff.
Right.
Ironically, he's one of the Perth parents here that we have. They don't like us calling them their Perth parents. Our friends that took us in, and his grandson or his partner's grandson is quite classically, I would say, autistic, like very clear signs of anything you think that is stereotypically autistic that people tend to like say that is what it is. He has shown a lot of those signs, and he can't emote how uncomfortable he is in auditory situations, but he's very polite. So he just said, I can't be in here at a restaurant one day. Can we go outside? It's too loud in here. I can't do it. And like, he's such a sweet kid. Like, he's just the cutest thing. So Jeff got him these, and then I was also like, yeah, I get that too. Like, if I'm in a really noisy place, I cannot think of anything else. It just really takes away from anything that's happening. So he ended up buying me some as
Nice.
well for my birthday, and they're game changer, particularly for just the little noises, because all it
Yeah.
does is it takes down the decibels around you. So it takes down anything to I think under 24 decibels is the ones that I've got. So if someone is talking 3 tables away, I can't hear what's happening about that, but I can hear you in front
Mhm.
of me. Or if Jim and Rachel are playing something, because they tend to like play games together quite late at night, and they're out there and I'm trying to work on my book, I can't if I can hear them, so it really does help. That's it for, I guess, neurodivergence and physical health. So let's talk about more broadly mental health, because like I
Sure.
said earlier, we all have days where we are just not feeling it. And sometimes those days can turn into weeks or months, or, little things can really throw you off what you enjoy. And I've recently had a conversation with a friend of mine who is going through something quite heavy right now, and it's out of his control, and that in itself is causing some mental stress. But he said that he couldn't even enjoy video games anymore, which is something he loved to do, because he realized that as soon as his achievements in those video games came into real life, it means nothing. So it's just taken away all of that enjoyment. So I guess it just opens a conversation to what mental health issues, I guess, have we both experienced, and then we'll go into, I guess, tools that we have to help alleviate, to get us enjoying the things that we enjoy again. We'll put a trigger warning in here for people because I have dealt with a bunch of stuff. So we'll go with suicidal ideation, depression, and self-harm for my triggers here. So maybe if you want to skip this part, come back in 5 minutes. just look after yourselves first.
We'll put the chapter markers in as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I had quite bad depression when I was, I'd say 17, 18, sort of, I didn't know what it was, but I wasn't feeling myself, and like I wouldn't know it until many years later about the trans stuff. But at the time I thought it was to do with coming out as a lesbian and queer, and not really knowing what to do with that. I just didn't fit in my body, didn't fit in what my trajectory was for my life. And I didn't know what to do with all that energy. So I went quite heavily down the self-harm and suicidal ideation. I still have suicidal ideation. I have a lot more tools these days to deal with it when it rears its head. Went to therapy. I was on antidepressants for years. I've come off them now. I talked about going back on them briefly when the transition stuff came up, because a lot of the same symptoms and the same ideations were coming back during that time. But I think because I was an adult at that point, I knew what it was. I at least had a language for it, so I didn't end up going back on it. And just like nowadays, I find a lot of my own mental health tends to, if I'm having a really bad day or if things are outside of my control, suicidal ideation is unfortunately when my brain goes straight away. But I at least now know that's what it is. And I know that my brain is putting those intrusive thoughts in there. And it doesn't necessarily mean what I thought they meant as a kid when I couldn't deal with them. And mental fatigue is something I think that we all deal with on occasion. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
Depression.
Yeah. Just that. Just that small thing.
I feel like I'm quite lucky because it does get coupled with anxiety quite a bit, but I don't have anxiety.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think very much the opposite for me. So I used to suffer from depression, like when I was a teenager, like 16 to 20, whatever. And very, very similar, self-harm and all of that, attempted suicide, things like that. Like there are things, and I think it just comes with the territory of being trans.
And also just being a teenager, because it sucks.
A lot of things. The world is difficult.
Yeah.
It's a challenging
And then
place.
you listen to teenagers talk nowadays, and you're like, buddy.
Yeah.
I wish I could help you, but you need to live it. Like,
you just gotta find your way.
Yeah.
But look, luckily, I am probably the least depressed person that I personally, because a lot of people will talk about, they can be depressed and here and there. I rarely have depressive days at all, and to me, it's the opposite. There's so many things that I'm excited by, like constantly all the time, and my brain's just constantly going. So I'm very fortunate. I think about that a lot because I am surrounded by people who do struggle with it. So that is something I think about all the time. But yeah, I deal with anxiety. It's something that I live with daily. So and that's a whole thing. Luckily, it's not the kind of anxiety where I'm worrying about things. A lot of people do constantly have those thoughts that they're ruminating on all the time about things outside of their control. For me, it's mostly like a physical anxiety, and I think most of it is just like living in a world not designed for neurodivergent people. Like, I think a lot of it is just like valid reasons, like they're actual reasons that make me anxious. Like a lot of it will be at work or when I have to go to an appointment and what I have to deal with there. And, those are actual things that I deal with rather than things that are, worrying me just because they're just in my mind. It's more just like things that you have to do to live. But it does sort of take a toll because with anxiety comes like the physical manifestations of that. So like, being tense all the time and like muscle tenseness and teeth grinding, like that's the whole thing. Like I for many years I had like a mouth guard type thing that I had to wear because I'm just constantly grinding my teeth, and I still do it, things like that. But again, you just live with it and you find coping methods.
Do you think that also works in with social anxiety?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Because there's lots of different types of anxiety, right? So social anxiety is one of those, just generalized anxiety disorder, just everything, life. Going outside, like I wouldn't call myself, what do you call it?
Agoraphobic?
Yeah, so it's not to that point, right? But like I don't enjoy... Like, if I'm going to leave the house, I have a plan. I know what I'm doing, where I'm going, who I'm talking to, and it was the same when I was like, actually going to work, like commuting. Now that I work from home, it's very, very different. But like that, I guess that's a good example because that anxiety, all of that just went away.
Right.
Just all in a single day. Like the minute I switched from going to work and commuting to work, and then working at home, like that's a whole section of anxiety, like a contribution to my anxiety that just completely went away. So there's different parts to it, but yeah, absolutely. I think being introverted, I think a lot of introverted people just are anxious people just by nature anyway. A lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time. So sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Question for you actually, just related to I guess depression and having different different moods and days that are, not as cheery as other days. Because I've noticed, and one of the things you mentioned recently is that you've become a little bit more of a mood reader, more than you ever have before. Is that also part of that? Is it because it's just something that you've noticed and you're just doing something that you know is more healthy for you, or is it completely unrelated?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. It may have something to do with it, but I really have felt a weight lift off my shoulders since coming into Perth. Now, I had pre-warned, this is just a bit of a story time, I guess, for people, because I am someone who does thrive on routine and needs that structure or they panic. I did have a conversation with Rachel before we came here and said, hey, I'm not going to have all the things that I normally do. There may be a point in this move where I just have a bit of a mental breakdown. Just a pre-warning because I don't have X, Y, and Z that I would normally do every week. And that happened. It happened a lot later than I thought it would. I thought it happened in the first couple of weeks, but I went through quite a dark, I wouldn't say period. It was a couple of days. The suicidal ideation got quite bad, and I know what it is, but I basically couldn't leave the house without putting myself in a scenario where I could end my life. And it was all I could think about. And it would come up with some wild scenarios. But because I'm also very visual, I could see it. Like I could see the whole scene playing out in my head, and I could be just walking out the front door. It didn't matter like what it was.
Yeah.
But I just remember that I was in the kitchen one day and I was cutting vegetables for dinner, and I just called her into the kitchen. I was like, I can't be here because my brain cannot turn off what it wants to do. Therefore, I'm just going to instruct you on how to cook dinner because I cannot be around a sharp object right now. I don't know whether that's had an effect because I'm now no longer as rigid. And the mood reading really has seemed to have come since being in this house and being settled again. It may have a connection. But I'm less worried about reading exactly what I've told the internet what I'm reading. And that also may be just having, I guess, a self-revelation on I don't need to put out content to get more followers. The whole point of doing this is for me. So why am I holding myself to a standard because I said that I'm going to read that? I still like having the plan because if I don't know what to read, I'm like, well, I was going to read these things and I've got this to choose from. Or I could be like, hey, that book looks neat and I don't need to impress anyone else. I'm literally here for myself. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's having that structure in place to make you feel good and know what's coming and what to expect, and not feeling so beholden to that plan that it's more like a guide than a plan.
Yeah.
Right? I guess that's
I
a
think
good way
that's
to put
how
it.
I view it now. It's like I've already read two things that weren't on the list this month, and that's fine. I won't get to something. I'm in the middle of something else. I don't care anymore. Like, I'm just having fun, and I think that's where we aim to get to, right? Is we're just having fun and finding those little things in each day. Which I guess is a good segue into the tools that we use to go like all of this. At the end of the day, what do we do to help with our mental and physical health? And when it comes to, in particular, our hobbies. You already took mine of the loop earplugs.
Yeah, sorry, I jumped the gun. Well, you can speak more about if there's other things that you wanted to mention on it.
Nah. For me, if I was going to give advice to anyone about this, it's let yourself feel what you're feeling. Because you're going to have days where you are in the claws of whatever has got you. You do not have to force yourself to do anything else. Give yourself a day. It is okay.
Yep. Especially right now. Give yourself time and be kind to yourself, right? I think more than ever right now, just be kind to yourself. Let yourself have what you feel that you need.
I feel like there's definitely an added pressure with having a platform. Regardless of what that is, it doesn't necessarily have to be BookTube. But I just had a conversation with a friend about Bookstagram who was chasing the likes and getting quite disheartened that they weren't coming, and I was like, do it for you. Like, what again comes back to that intent, right? Who are you doing it for? And if you're enjoying it, great. If you're not enjoying it, don't do it. Like, it's that sort of thing. And give yourself permission to step away from the things that aren't bringing you joy right now.
100%. Number one for me is, I guess, finding ways to do the thing that you need to do. Like finding little things, hacks, if you want to call them hacks, little ways of coping. And I think growing up undiagnosed autistic, I found a lot of those just naturally, just having to do it because what choice do you have, right? So a lot of those, and there's there's too many things to name, but like you find those little ways of just figuring out how to get by. A lot of it can be healthy. A lot of it isn't as well. Like for example, masking is a big topic, and that's something that a lot of neurodivergent folks have to do just to get by, just to get through the day, and not draw attention to themselves, to avoid those conversations they don't want to have to have. I think we all mask a little bit, like to a point, because we all have different personas that we have to kind of step into to like I'm sure work Chris is different to home Chris, right? Like you have to wear different hats, right? And a lot of that is the same, but it can be unhealthy as well. So it's just knowing what is helpful for you in any given scenario. But then also for me, it's just a lot of like, a lot of it is planning and anticipating things and advocating for myself where I can. So if something isn't working for me, and one of those big ones, especially in the last couple of years since I started working from home, is like social interactions. So if what I need to do is stay home and read a book and do nothing but that, I'm okay saying no, I can't go to that thing. Sorry, there's something else I have to do, and I'm fine with that now. Like younger me probably would have had issues with that, but these days I'm just like, no, this is what I need to do. And for the most part, the people that actually matter in my life are fine with that, so the people that actually care about you won't have an issue with that.
That's the thing. I think you find your tribe, right? You find your pack, or you're in a circle of people who, I think if we had plans and you sent me a text saying like, I can't do it, so I'm like, sweet, we'll reschedule. Like,
Hmm.
whatever. I know what's going on there, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are people pleasers in just the world in general, and that can be a very hard thing to build that boundary for yourself, which is probably another point for mine is set your boundaries where you can. And
Mhm.
you're right, work, Chris, is different to, what you're all experiencing now. But work is a place where I've had to set my boundaries quite strictly for me. I don't know that it comes across as being strict for other people. It may do, but things like I've been on leave for the last 8 days or whatever it was, so I've turned the phone off and I put it away. Whereas normally during the week I won't turn it off in case people need me. I won't necessarily look at it after hours, but if there is a call that comes through and I'm near it, I'm not going to not answer for that staff member who needs X, Y, Z, whatever it is. Having to do that in your real life can be different. I mean, I'm not two different people, but it's two different personas,
Yeah.
and there's a barrier between the two. Um, I guess for me, reading is my bread and butter. So I tend to, with reading, if things are happening, so if I've got brain fog for a couple of days, or I can get quite stressed and upset because I haven't been able to do the thing that I enjoy doing, and that is where audiobooks have come in. I'm trash audio retention. It is not my learning style. It took me 12 months of dedication to be able to listen to a book and obtain 80% of the information in there. And I know if I listen to a book, I'm going to lose things. Like I'm okay with that. I tend to
Yeah.
listen to books that I know I'll retain more on. So that's where sci-fi comes in,
Yep.
or horror. I generally won't listen to fantasy on audio unless I've read the first book physically and I have a vision of it. So something that I do is if I'm having a couple of days of brain fog and I am feeling, it's hard to describe. It's almost the same feeling as dysphoria for me, where it like my skin is crawling and I feel anxious because I'm not doing that thing that brings me joy, or that small win for the day. I can switch what I'm doing, or I can switch. I tend to have an easier book on the go because nowadays I tend to gravitate towards, I guess, more thematic or bigger series that has a whole bunch of stuff happening at once. But if I need like an easy standalone, just so I can read and I can concentrate on something that's easy, it's going to be a 3-star read. But I still get to tick off that thing for me that day. That makes me happy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
cool, that's a win. Even if it's an average read or a 3-star read, which isn't a bad book. We'll get into ratings, different topic. Um, but you know what I mean? Just having something there that alleviates but also attributes to the things that I enjoy.
Yeah.
I know that if I can't do anything, the first thing I'm dropping is watching TV. Like,
Yeah. Right.
I don't gravitate towards it. And that's okay. You can fluctuate between whatever it is.
Yeah. I use actually one thing I didn't mention is I use an app, a service called Brain FM. Not sponsored, just something I really enjoy. They binaural beats. They and you mentioned it before. They kind of increase focus and things like that. That actually really works. But I use it for reading. So if I'm reading something and I just need to shut out the world, I'll probably just put in some noise cancelling headphones and listen to that, and it's my concentration just goes through the roof. It's great.
And so while I just have to like listen to it till my brain works and then I turn off. Like, okay, cool. We know what we're doing now. Great, we've rejigged that whole situation.
Nice. It just takes there's a warming up period that happens.
Yeah.
Everyone is so different with how you have to deal with things, the things that you have to deal with, but then how you need to deal with them. And I think a lot of this just boils down to knowing yourself, knowing what works for you, getting to know yourself if you're still struggling, finding ways that will help you, and not being able to, not being afraid to ask for help when you need it as well.
It's a very powerful tool and something that we as humans don't necessarily like to do, even if we are bettered for it at the end of the day. But I guess for me, it comes down to building that trust with the people that you love and who love you and accepting it, because that can also be another side of that coin is I don't need anyone. And I've definitely lived that life before of trying to do it all myself, and you don't have to. We're not meant to. We're a communal species.
Cool. Well, I think that about does it for today's episode. All the notes, all the links to everything that we talked about, we'll put all of that in the show notes. You can check those out. But thanks so much for watching or listening. You can find the show at Genre Blender Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You can follow us at Genre Blender Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, if you're still able to use TikTok.
RIP TikTok.
Oh, that's a whole thing. Blue Sky, Threads, and direct links to all of our socials are on our website, genreblenderpodcast.com. Kris is at A Fictional Escapist everywhere, I think, right?
Yeah, pretty much everywhere.
Yep. And I'm at ryan.floyd, that's Ryan with an I on Instagram, and ryanfloyd.com on Blue Sky. And that's it.
To all our world hoppers out there, we wish you safe travels, and we'll catch you in the next episode where I am getting Ryan to do another tag. We're going to be doing the personal canon tag created by Taylor over at Made Between the Pages. We're going to do our own version of it. So we'll see you then.
Nice.
And until then, ciao.
See y'all.